Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to take place in the 15th chapter in the book of Proverbs, and we're going to condense our preamble to a simple who, what, why, when, where formula. So the who, Solomon is the author, the immediate audience to whom he directed it to was his children, but it also connects to posterity. Just because everything in Scripture isn't written to us does not mean that it is not written for us. These are all for our benefit, and the value is there's no expiration date on the value of these words, which though are not initially written to us are very much written for us. The what is a Proverbs, that is a literary device, which is a pithy saying of condensed wisdom. The creator of Proverbs must really pack a punch with their words. They must say as much as possible while saying as little as possible, and Proverbs are by no means unique to the Hebrew culture. Every culture has their own versions, but what is especially unique about these is these have spiritual nourishment and value. There is a treasure field of spiritual sustenance throughout this book. And so the two whens I want to communicate is circa 1000 BM before Messiah, when Solomon reigned. This was a virtual golden age in the United Kingdom of Israel. After his reign it would splinter. But the other when I want to communicate is what I recommend to baby believers is to read a chapter of this book a day, and because we can't have people just flipping from random segments of Scripture just looking for gems. That's going to be chaos. We have to get them in a repetitive cycle with a destination, not just flipping randomly. So this book gives them a day each to ponder, and if they repeat the cycle, they'll notice new things hit them in new ways and new emphases. So this is a definite formula for growth that I'd like to recommend any of you out there who do teach people to get them in the habit of saying one a day at least for as many months as they stick with it. And the what also, there's a lot, there's no uniform pattern of topics addressed. This is the full range and span of human activities that the book of Proverbs really touches, but there is a lot to say on language in the first 8 verses of this chapter. We're going to open with the open one, which reads, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up displeasure." So the antidote to a wrath or negative response is clearly a positive response or a gentle answer, because if you retaliate with more wrath and a harsher word than that what is said to you, you provoke and stir the pot, and you provoke the butterfly effects that can have ruinous potential and ultimately destructive potential in relationships. So words are a key indicator of how we maintain and build and can end the relationships we have. So it's always better to answer in kindness when you are when you are spoken to angrily, because if you sink to their level, you're just going to make it worse than it already is. "The tongue of the wise makes knowledge good, but the mouth of fools pours out foolish." So from the tongue of the brain that it's connected to will come wise words or foolish words. From the brain that is connected to the tongue of the wise will naturally express and materialize. From that tongue will materialize words that are wise and good and positive and efficacious, but those of the fool are damaging, belittling, and destructive, and there's no value in them because they come from a mind without much value. "The eyes of Yahweh are in every place, watching the evil and the good." So the omnipresence and the implicit entailment that he will judge us because he has a perfect DVD Blu-rated film of our lives in his head all at once. That is a motivator to obey. We must never lose sight of the fact that no matter how secret we think our sins are, it is known to one even more than we try and bury it and hide it. But it is transparent and obvious to the one whose eyes are in every place, watching over the evil and the good. A healing tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it crushes the spirit. So this is another way of saying gentle answers or soft answers. Healing tongues are within the power of our tongues. We read in Proverbs 18:21 are the power of life or death. So we have to really calculate and be careful about how we utilize words and what words are at our disposal to utilize, not only what we say but how we say it. So we are to speak the truth, but in love, in Ephesians 4:15. But if we enter into, if any element of perverseness enters into the tongue, however healing it might be, it's going to corrupt and corrode and crush the spirit. So within the powers of words are the powers to uplift and rebuild and to heal, as well as the power to tear down, to destroy, and to diminish. A fool despises his father's discipline, but he who heeds reproof is clever. So the response to discipline, no one likes it, but the clever one will embrace it for what it is and embrace its remedial and educative value, where the fool will not be able to look past the pain of a father's discipline, and they will despise it and reject it and not benefit from it because their outlook and their attitude towards it is negative. They will not embrace it or refuse to be corrected by it, and that is a dangerous place when you refuse to be corrected by anything. But if we are clever, we will embrace the constructive criticism and the discipline and the trials that the Father sends our way for what they are, growing opportunities. The household of the righteous is a great treasure, but the income of the wicked is trouble. So what he's saying here is that even though the income of the wicked might be more intense or deep than that of the household of the righteous, with it comes trouble. So, money doesn't solve all the problems in the world, especially ill-gotten wealth, because that is very much the income of the wicked. So it's better to be righteous and have little than to be wicked and have much, because true wealth consists not in the number of possessions, but in the fewness of wants. The lips of the wise scatter knowledge, but the heart of the fools is not so. So knowledge can be scattered from in its multitude and multifold elements from the one who is expert in its ways. From their lips they can scatter knowledge, and the wise will generally have a more wider spectrum or criteria of information to expound upon. But the heart of fools, not only is their heart not in it, but they could never do it even if their heart was in it, because the fool has no appetite for that stuff, but they also don't have the ingredients. They themselves are foolish, so they are incompetent and unable and also unwilling to scatter knowledge, because that's just not the way their minds are wired or our beings are oriented. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to Yahweh, but the prayers of the straight is his delight. The straight is his delight. So this is the fourth verse, which speaks of proper language, prayer, how we address the Father, and when and how and with what manner and what spirit is determining factors into whether they will be accepted or not. Even though the sacrifice is no longer operative, this can refer to any external observation of worship, of going to church, going through the motions. But if you harbor wickedness in you while you go through the motions and abuse them, that is an abomination to Yahweh. But the prayers of the upright or the straight are his delight. They are pleasing and acceptable and delightful in his sight. The way of the wicked is an abomination to Yahweh, but he loves him who pursues righteousness. So what we have here is an antithetical, dichotomal contrast between the righteous and the wicked. So the wicked, their ways, their beings, the way they live, the way they are, what they do is an abomination to Yahweh. but his love is invested in and unfolds and manifests over those who pursue righteousness. What does it say in the New Testament? Seek ye first the kingdom of Elohim and his righteousness, and all the rest shall be added unto you. Now that's something we take at face value, so we got to, his righteousness and the spread of his kingdom ought to be our primary priority at all places and at all times. Discipline is grievous to him who forsakes the way. He who hates reproof dies. So this is the second thing he has to say about the outlooks and attitudes and outcomes towards flippant people, towards those who forsake the way. They're gonna not have the attitude from which growth can come when they are disciplined or sent in trials. And if we forsake the way, that means we're going our own way, doing our own thing, being our own masters, having our own moral compasses, which apart from Yahweh is flawed and unreliable. And but if we don't embrace the discipline, if we hate it and don't grow from it, we're better off dead, and we're gonna be dead soon. And a scoffer does not love his reproofer, nor does he go to the wise. So this is the outlook and orientation and attitude of the scoffer. A scoffer is one who takes what is to be taken seriously trivially, and takes what is trivial seriously, more often the latter than the former, or the former than the latter, sorry. But so he does not seek discipline, and he does not seek wisdom. He thinks he knows it all. They have all the answers. They are going to be setting themselves up for a rude awakening when they come to the end of this life and find out that they did not have all the answers. A glad heart makes good a face, but by sorrow of hearts the spirit is stricken. So this, how we, what the condition of our heart will be a reflection which can impact or influence that which those who are around us. And if we bring sorrow with us, if we bring bad vibes and sorrowful vibes, someone else's spirit is going to be stricken. And so why bring sorrow when we can bring gladness and hope? The heart of the understanding one seeks knowledge, but the mouth of the fool feeds on folly. So the wise have an altogether different intellectual appetite than the fools. The fools feed themselves with trash and garbage, which does not stimulate the intellect, nor expand the mind, nor better the character. But the wise, we seek after knowledge. It has an addictive quality with no hangover or side effects. We cannot get enough of knowledge, but the fool doesn't have that appetite or inclination, and so they gravitate towards the trash and the things that don't make one think or better or improve anyone or anything else. All the days of the afflicted are evil, but gladness of the heart is a continual feast. So all, three-letter word, all that entails a universal dimension. All the days of the afflicted are evil. Evil and affliction are somewhat closer in the old covenant theology than they are in the new. That's ultimately has a whole matrix of complexity I didn't prepare for, because I didn't even anticipate I'd be saying that. But more to the point of the passage, gladness of the heart is a continual feast, so we can have a perpetual cloud of prayer can be us if we bring the gladness of our heart wherever we go and wherever we are and whatever we do. Better is a little with fear of Yahweh than great treasure with trouble. So this connects us to an earlier passage. The income of the wicked brings trouble. And I think I mentioned much of what I could have said when I commented on whatever passage that was. But from the foundation of fear of Yahweh, that makes all the possessions, and it places them all in their proper priority. So it's all well and good to buy the things that money can buy, but we mustn't lose the things that money can't buy in the process of that pursuit. So we cannot forsake the foundation of fear of Yahweh, and the temptation is great treasures come with troubles. They often expose and open problems and dilemmas that wouldn't be there in the absence of that wealth, but that's just the way it is. Better is a man of vegetables where love is than a fatted calf with hatred. So what good is going to a more delicate dining and feast with hatred when vegetables will suffice in the company of those who love you? The determining factor in the quality of meal is not always the quality of food, but the quality of company. So why surround yourself with hatred if there's going to be all this delicious meat when you can fill yourselves on vegetables with your friends and family, those who you love and trust, and there can be no hatred in the room or chaos or contention or quarrel. A man of wrath stirs up strife, and he who is patient appeases strife. So we have two personality contrast and clashes here. The man of wrath naturally seeks to stimulate more of the same. That's what they do. They're stirring up strife because they are pouring out their wrath on situations where it kind of fuels a fire that's already there, and this leads to outbreak of conflict and quarrel. But those who are patient, those who don't get upset or take things personally, we know how to neutralize the strife using our words or whatever other resources are at our disposal. The way of the lazy one is like a hedge of thorns, but the way of the straight is a highway. So Solomon doesn't have any kind words at all, in fact, to say about the idlers, and he often connects it to poverty, which is, a general simplification and oversimplification, but I believe much of it is true, that a lot of poverty is rooted in laziness. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And but the way of the straight is a highway. That doesn't mean there's going to be bumps. There's not going to be bumps and roads on the straight and narrow that we are called to walk on, because it is not a smooth path, but the way has been paved by the one who proved that he was the Son of Yahweh, and his resurrection is legitimate. So I try and stay away from excessively Christological interpretations in the Old Testament. That's one of the pet peeves I kind of frown on in others, yet here I am myself taking unnecessary leaps. Moving on to the passage. Wise son makes a father glad, but a foolish man despises his mother. So the foolish man is in violation of the 5th commandment of the Decalogue: respect and reverence and honor thy father and mother, that thy days might be long throughout the land. But the wise son has his priorities in order. They exist to please and make his father glad, not necessarily at his beck and call, but just living their own life and succeeding in doing so. But the foolish man is not going to love or respect his mother, and that's a foolish thing to do, and it has a foolish outcome that the fool doesn't calculate or anticipate. Folly is joy to one lacking heart, but a man of understanding walks straight. So where ignorance is bliss, 'tis folly to be wise. So as that's the philosophy of fools. So why be wise when you can be happy? They know no qualitatively greater joy than that they know from folly, which can include riotous living and laughter. And but a man of understanding walks straight. That means there's no confusion, there's no misdirection. They have a destination and they are on the journey, and they know where they're going and they know how they're going to get there. Without counsel, plans are nullified, but by great counselors they are established. Solomon, as a royal ruler, would have been well acquainted with the value of having multiple sources of information and advice at his disposal. So, as a general rule, the more advisors and inputs and perspectives you surround yourselves with, the better able you are to make your own decision in light of their advice. So you want to have all types of people, and as many within reason or practicality as there can be, because without them, your plans are going to instantly evaporate and instantly destroy. Advisors exist to protect kings from leading themselves to their own ruin, which they often would do otherwise. A man has joy by the answer of his mouth, and how good is a word in its season. So this is another verse. I mentioned there was a concentration in the first 8 verses. Here's another one yet still, the 5th one on the verse, which has to say about the joy and beauty and correctness of language. So how we answer can be a source of joy for ourselves and to others, to know that we did not leave any debris when we exited from a conversation, and just to speak the right word in the right way at the right time to the right person. That is a feeling that is a blessing beyond description. The path of life is upward for the wise, to turn away from the grave below. So our path is upward, and it's also forward, but it's upward as it ultimately leads to heaven. This is the way of the wise. The wise know that there is a life after this next, and how we perform in this life will determine how we prosper or flourish or even have a chance to begin with in the life which comes after it. It's all about making it to the resurrection, and the wise know that. There I go again with the Christological spins. Yahweh tears down the house of the proud, and he establishes the boundary of the widow. So every item of ownership and possession is we're mere stewards of it. Everything we have and everything we are and everything we do belongs to the Creator, who gives us what he creates to steward responsibly. And if you don't do it, if you're going to be proud, your house is going to be torn down, because pride is a sin. And he has a concern for the welfare of the vulnerable and oppressed of society. So he establishes, the same one who tears down the house of the proud is going to give the landmarker and establish the boundary for the widow, the one who was neglected and oppressed and overlooked. Evil thoughts are an abomination to Yahweh, but pleasant thoughts are clean. This reminds me of an 18th century rabbi who said that man's mind is the holy of holies, and to admit an unclean or evil thought in there is to like setting up an idol in the holy of holies. So evil thoughts are rightly they are idolatrous if they take up any space at all in our mind. That can distract anything that is not aligned with the character or nature of Yahweh, who is good, is inherently and automatically evil, and is rejectable and despicable and detestable in the sight of him. And but also pleasant words are clean. So the words that we speak are a reflection and an indicator of the thoughts in our head. So this is good. Pleasant words are clean. Evil thoughts are an abomination. We have an antithetical contrast between the expressions of humanity. He who is greedy for gain troubles his own house, but he who hates bribes lives. So once more, he has something to say about the ill-gotten gain and pursuit of wealth. Greedy of gain, it's going to invite trouble and disaster and calamity. The authorities are going to get there, or eventually some of your friends and families are going to start scheming for your money, and it's going to invite disasters and bring havoc into your life that wouldn't be there if you had just gotten your money honestly. So the idea is to hate bribes, to reject them, to want nothing to do to them. That's certainly a temptation which people placed in positions of powers are not immune to accepting, but that's the way you live. The heart of the righteous ponders how to answer, but the mouth of the wicked pours out evil. So the heart of the righteous actually takes time to pause and consider how we might answer questions before they come to us. Always have an answer for those who are in, for the explanation of the faith you have in 1 Peter 3:15. And but the mouth of the wicked, they do not think, they do not pause to think or consider. They just pour out, they eject it, and vomit, a projectile vomiting the evil which comes from their heart and flows out to their mind into the ears of others and contaminates them with their poisonous words. Yahweh is far from the wicked, but he hears the prayer of the righteous. So the wicked, they can call on the name of Yahweh all they want, but in Isaiah 59:2, we read that sin serves as a separating barrier between us and him, so that we have to get our sins in order before we call out to him. If we are in his will and aligned with his purposes and reach out to him in prayer, he will hear us because we are praying righteously and we are not in our wickedness. But he is as far from the east as from the west as he is from the wicked, because before his sacred presence, no wicked thing or element can be permitted. The light of the eyes rejoices the heart. A good report gives marrow to the bones. This is actually the fifth or sixth time that he has something to say about good language. He would have been on the receiving end of reports, and to hear positive news or complimentary news would have been a delightful experience to him. And then verse 31, an ear that hears the reproof of life dwells among the wise. So once more, the embracing of correction and discipline are indicative of the path of life and the way of the wise. So the fool, as we've already read, wants nothing to do with them, but to embrace correction leading unto life is very much an act of wisdom, and their ears will hear the reproof. They will, look after it. They will ask for it. They will live with it. They will learn from it. He who ignores discipline hates himself, but he who listens to reproof gets understanding. So if we want to keep on hating discipline and ignoring it and trying to do away with it altogether, that's fine, but we're only not serving, we're acting as though we hated ourselves by acting against our own self-interest. But we who listen to can gain understanding, because without correction we have no way of knowing that what we're doing is wrong or could be better. So you have to take constructive criticism, even if it's not offered to you in a constructive light. You have to interpret it constructively. What is he saying? Try and eliminate any personal, try not to take anything they say about you personal, but really listen to what they say about your performance or your outbreak. So that is a challenge in itself. But the 33rd and final verse reads, the fear of Yahweh is the discipline of wisdom, and before esteem is humility. So the fear of Yahweh is the foundation of wisdom, and this is expressed as early as 1:7 and 9:10 and throughout the book of Proverbs. But here he connects it to the discipline of wisdom. So wisdom is a discipline. It is a practice. It does demands preparations and cultivations. But the final sentence, before esteem is humility. You want to be esteemed, you have to be humble, and then you'll be exalted. This brings us to the New Testament, Matthew 23:12, Luke 14:11, and Luke 18:14. He who humbles himself shall be exalted, but he who exalts himself shall be abased. So that is the paradox, and that's one of the things we have to learn. So I hope that that's why you're here to learn. I'm happy to teach you. I'm glad you keep coming. Stay tuned until next time. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.